to taking on Trump. North Korea test-fired multiple short-range projectiles this weekend. It's understood to be its first missile launch since late 2017. President Trump remained optimistic on Twitter, saying a deal will happen and that Kim Jong-un, quote, knows that I am with him. What do you make of all this? And as president, would you be willing to meet with Kim Jong-un?
So this is the problem. We have a president now that continues to mislead the American people. You remember his deplorable tweet when he came out and said, oh, there's no need to worry about the nuclear threat from North Korea anymore. He has been much more about bluster and being braggadocious as opposed to substantive strategy and making sure we're checking a North Korean dictator. And of course, I'll meet with our enemies, but I will meet with them under the right conditions, using every bit of leverage I have to focus in on the goal, articulating a strategy for getting there. And this is something our foreign policy has been woefully acting. We've seen foreign policy by tweet. We've seen a president that contradicts his diplomacy corps, contradict his military leaders, who then have to go and try to clean up for what they've done. We have no strategy when it comes to foreign policy, and what's eroding right now is not only our position in the world, but even our alliances themselves and our allies. As I have these conversations, as I travel internationally, are beginning to question our commitment to fundamental democratic values. When you have a president that seems to buddy up with the Chairman Kim or Duterte or Putin more than he's friends with people like May and Merkel and the people that are our real allies that can work with us to holding not just Russia accountable, China accountable, but these are critical allies we need in our trade deals. These are our critical allies we're going to deal with global climate change. And so it's been very frustrating, and I've heard this on both sides of the aisle from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to have a president that has been lacking strategy, unpredictable, undermining his diplomacy corps, and even undermining his generals when it comes to things like Syria policy, where he tweets out that we're pulling out of Syria imminently.
There is a divide right now in the Democratic Party among the presidential candidates between some, like Vice President Biden, who seem to see President Trump as just an aberration, and others, like Bernie Sanders, who see Donald Trump as just the natural next Republican president, that he's not an aberration, that this is what Republicans now are. Where do you come down on that? Do you see him as an aberration, or do you see him as this is what the Republican Party is now?
I think as long as the conversation is about Donald Trump, as long as I can turn on my TV and coast through channels and see him being talked about in every single interview, he's winning. I beat a machine here in Newark. There's an Oscar-nominated documentary about me challenging a machine with a charismatic a leader at the top of it. And I didn't make it about him. I made it about the people. And we energized an entirely new electorate to come out, and we won. I think we're going to be defined as a party not by what we stand against, but by what we're for. And I want my Democratic Party now not even to be defined simply as trying to beat Republicans at a time where we need to unite Americans back to a sense of common purpose and common cause. I do not think this is a time that we need to fight fire with fire. I ran a fire department. It's not a really good strategy. I walked into one town hall and a guy puts his arm around me and says, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face. And I turned to him and said, hey man, that's a felony. And us black guys, we don't normally get away with those things that often. Let's sit down and let me tell you why the best strategy right now is doubling down on the best of who we are, not the worst, by talking about love in a beloved community, and not the kind of Twitter trash and trolling that we hear from the White House right now. And I know Donald Trump wants us to try to fight him on his turf and his terms. What's needed right now is not more of that. We didn't beat Bull Connor by bringing bigger dogs and more powerful water hoses. We won that by expanding the moral imagination of this whole country about who we are and who we must be going forward.
While we were in Newark, Senator Booker and I also took a walk in his neighborhood where the issue of gun violence has become quite personal for him. How prevalent has gun violence been in this area?
You're literally standing where last year, as it was related to me, the shooter was over there with an assault rifle, killed Shahad Smith, who lived with me in Brick Towers right here. This is not an intellectual issue to me. It's not something I read about here about in the news. You're standing in a community that's been plagued by gun violence. And even though my mayor, Ross Baraka, continues to drive down the rate, this section of this street was one of the most violent places in New Jersey when I first moved here. And, you know, you live in a community where fireworks go off on the 4th of July, kids evidence behavior of somebody with post-traumatic stress. They hide. They
think it's a gunshot.
They think it's gunshots. Where you see in your neighborhood shrines to children, to teenagers that were on the sidewalk, teddy bears and candles. So for me, this is, I so badly want to be president, because if I'm president of the United States, I'm going to bring a fight to the NRA that they've never seen before. And I'll tell you what, people in this community know that this is not just a horrific mass shooting after horrific mass shooting. We have mass shootings in our country in the aggregate every single day. So there's a sense of urgency I have that every day we lose dozens of lives by not solving this problem, and that there are common sense things that even NRA members agree we should do, but we're not getting it done.
Is that where you're going to push for? I understand you're going to introduce some gun legislation in the next few days.
I'm going to come at this like folks have never seen before. I'm going to choose policy and use tactics to end this nightmare in this country, and I come home and I'm reminded by the survivors of shootings, by the community fabric that's still torn, because people don't get that the one shooting in a neighborhood kills the business at a restaurant. People lose jobs, family members lose income. I mean, this is a problem that is at crisis levels in our country. In our lifetime, we're the same age, more people have died for gun violence than all the wars from the Revolutionary War till now combined.
But what can be done? Because, first of all, the Republicans control the Senate, as you know, and second of all, you know this, a semi-automatic rifle that was used in this shooting, that's not typical. Usually,
no, it's 5% of all.
Right. Mostly it's handguns, right?
I've analyzed this issue more than, I mean, this cause has been a part of my life. This isn't new for me. So I know the levers you can pull to get pretty dramatic results just by having universal background checks. The murders we don't talk about enough between intimate, like where your spouse kills you, they go down. Violence against women in that sense goes down 40% in states that have enacted those laws. So there's things we can do, there are levers we can pull that can make us much, much safer, but we're not doing them. And I do not accept the excuse that we've tried before. I have seared into my mind the gruesome realities, literally with a gunshot victim bleeding to death as I vainly tried to stop him from dying, literally with people who grew up.
You were here?
It was not right here, no. I'm around the corner. No, that's the irony. I could sit here and name shootings of bodies I've seen on the sidewalk. I can name Hassan Washington. I can name Shahad Smith. I can talk about the kids that I knew growing up whose lives are ended by gun violence. And so I'm running for president for many reasons. This is one that we will get it done. We will get it done.
And literally, just minutes after I finished that interview, 2 people were wounded in a drive-by shooting just blocks from the senator's